And a lot of the environmental issues that we're facing are court-driven. They're mandated by the court, so there are actions the state's going to have to take. Yeah. And it's not so much taking the action, but how you implement it and how you coordinate that with people that are regulated and being affected. 5 years ago, the state of Maryland signed a MOU with the federal government, and through that MOU, they came up with a plan for oyster restoration. And the guiding force, the incentive behind that plan was the Chesapeake Bay Agreement. And that was to bring 5 tributaries in Maryland, and there's 5 tributaries in Virginia, back to historic oyster population levels. I'm not sure exactly what that definition is, but that's the goal of the plan. And that plan was instituted, and it was funded mostly through the federal government. There's state money involved also. But Virginia embarked on its plan with the Corps of Engineers. Their MOU was separate. Maryland, we signed this MOU, and we embarked on our plan with the federal government, with the Corps of Engineers. And NOAA is a very important participant in that MOU. And when the Maryland plan was drawn up, 3 tributaries were selected to be the initial 3 areas that would be targeted for restoration. Those were Harris Creek, the Little Choptank, and the Tred Avon River. As part of that MOU, a 5-year study was to be conducted after the commencement of the restoration project, and that study was scheduled to be released this past July. It was released last July. And there's also an Oyster Advisory Commission in Maryland. I'm not sure if that commission had expired or if it just simply existed and didn't function much after the original MOU. Early in the Hogan administration, there was an argument over the efficiency, the effectiveness of Harris Creek, the first tributary of the 3. And that argument was, well, Harris Creek is not producing oysters as quickly as it was supposed to be producing them. So before we move forward with the Tred Avon River, let's wait for the 5-year study to be released so we can find out what actually is going on in Harris Creek, and then make a decision based off of that scientific data that's available. This Oyster Advisory Commission is the group that is tasked with reviewing that 5-year study, which is a 900-page report. And that came out in July. The commission has met 3 or 4 times. It meets in Annapolis. It has about 21 members. It's balanced between state environmental stakeholders, scientists, and industry stakeholders, some actual watermen, others more involved in the seafood marketing aspect of the industry. And the report is an extensive review of oysters throughout the bay, going all the way down to the Virginia line, clear up into the the Susquehanna, and it goes into detail. And the bay is an amazing estuary. It has more food for life than most any other body of water in the world. And it's just an incredible place, and that's. At one time it was the largest estuary, but I think they found one in China that might be a little bit larger. But I don't believe they've got the food density that we have in the bay, and that's why the bay is it's an ecological wonder. Oysters are very interesting in that they are very unique in the way they grow, what affects them. Per the request to delay moving forward on the Tred Avon River until the report was available, the governor said we're going to hold off on requesting moving forward on the Tred Avon River until we review the report. Well, there was a deadline for the commission to either recommend we move forward or not move forward. I think it was like August 5th, and we received that was a Friday. And the following Friday, this report was emailed to the commission members at like 7 o'clock in the evening. And the following Monday was the next commission meeting. And, we talked about the report, and we talked about some of the things that of our interest to different stakeholders, and But we really didn't get into the details of what was included in the report and what the recommendations were. And so at the end of the meeting, the secretary said, well, we've got a consensus to move forward with the Tred Avon River. Let's pick our next date for the commission meeting. And some of the other, I don't believe that some of the commission members even knew they were, that the idea that we were going to recommend to move forward on the Tred Avon River based off of this report was being proposed. And so I asked the secretary, I said, are you calling for a vote on this right now? And he says, yes, Johnny, we have a consensus. And I said, what? I can't go home and look people in the eye and say, I've read that report and the data shows that this is the way to go with the Tred Avon River. And so I said, put me down in the negative. And some of the other commission members were looking at me, kind of trying to size everything up to understand what was happening. But lo and behold, the consensus was taken, and so that following week, the department said they used that as an impetus to request funding and to move forward with the Tred Avon River. Now it was for 8 acres of restoration. In total, the completing the Tred Avon River is going to be 156 acres. So the next step, this is phase 2, and then you go to phase 3. Well, there were problems in Harris Creek. Boats were running aground. This was deep water work. The contractor worked hard to try to fix those problems, but they were significant problems, and to my knowledge, are not totally repaired or fixed, if you will. They put buoys out, and people have still run into some of that structure over the summer. Now in the Tred Avon River, we're talking about doing shallow water work, and there was no shallow water work in the in Harris Creek. In my mind, we needed to take our time, really look at what's going on in the Tred Avon River, and find out exactly what is the best way to use the investment. Ultimately, the bay, the entire bay, is a potential for growing oysters. Well, maybe not up in the freshwater, but in the medium to high salinity areas. There are so many ways to grow oysters, and we're going to use taxpayer money, we use federal money, and we use state money. So if we're going to do that, we ought to find the best way to grow oysters in every part of the bay that we can. And it isn't, oftentimes when you talk about oysters, you automatically raise the hair of watermen and you raise the hair of environmental proponents. Their hair automatically goes up. And in my mind, I take all that, I don't view oyster restoration through that lens. My lens is how do you grow oysters the best, and how do we make this work? I want to fix problems. I want to rehash old arguments. Well, in the Tred Avon River, we could have easily just said no shallow water work, which would have taken, I believe, 50 acres out of that 156 off the restoration table. The existing acreage in Tred Avon would still get, I think it's 5 million seed per acre. So 5 million seed per acre on 90 acres is quite a bit of investment. The money that would have been used to do the other 50 acres, we could have used to do test projects in high salinity areas where oysters are growing. We could have used that to maybe seed other areas. We could have used that for our seed and shell program. Maryland's oyster production for years was based off of a seed and shell program, which included dredging shell. That's a controversial topic because the Man-O-War Shoal holds the best known source of native shell in the bay, and to dredge that, there are opponents and proponents. But use that money to get a local shell source. Identify a priority for how do you get a sustainable oyster fishery, and not from a commercial sense, but just from a sustainable oyster fishery. What's the cycle? How do we make that happen? Because right now, what appears to be forming is a system where, in order to grow oysters, we're going to have to request more and more federal funding for seed and planting and things like that. And I understand we've gotten more money to reseed Harris Creek, which was originally seeded and was supposed to be a sustainable oyster sanctuary. I know is that, I mean, this is something that the commission should be able to look at and answer. I'm concerned, though, that there is a drive to move forward with the original plan, and the original plan is a big, broad plan, and to move forward without looking at these past 3 investments and not using the information we have from those to improve what we do in the future. I'm afraid that, you know, this is that we're going to move too quickly, and then once you do these major projects, they're permanent sanctuaries. You can't go back and undo what you've done. Most people thank me. John, I'm glad you were the only guy that said, no, we need to stop and read this report. But then I think there were some that were very concerned that, you know, that there was an effort to try to block the commission from moving forward. And it wasn't that at all. Oyster restoration is hard work, and there's no silver bullet, like I said earlier, to try to bring back our oyster stock. It's going to take hard work, and it's going to take a lot of attention, and it's going to take a lot of persistence, and it's going to take a lot of calculated risks. And we can do that. The bay is a big bay, and there's and we have a lot of support to do this. And but I'm afraid if we just lock into a political position that you know we're going to do this, you know, put our foreheads forward and don't take suggestions, then we're going to miss a great opportunity. The governor is very supportive of looking at the original plan and improving it. And you know, there was, when he originally said hold off on the Tred Avon River, a lot of folks were really upset about that. They said, "Oh, we're missing all this federal money." Well, the money is there now. It's not like the Tred Avon project isn't moving forward. I mean, the mere fact that someone said, "Wait a minute, you need to slow down and look carefully at what you're doing," should not be offensive. I mean, that's you know, people expect their government to do things and do them right, and do them with everyone's best interest in mind. Yeah. And looking at oysters in the bay, in Maryland's portion of the bay, if you go across the line to Virginia, in the Virginia waters, oyster restoration there is a very positive, supported, community-driven activity. And I know it's very different in Virginia than it is in Maryland, but if we can do it in Virginia, then we can certainly do it in Maryland. You know, it's 7 days a week, and you go every day, and you get up in the morning, you go as fast as you can. It's supposed to be a part-time job, and it definitely isn't, and I love it. It's something that you never get tired of doing. And for me, to the moments when I just smile and look in the mirror and say, gosh, this is, you know, is when there's a person who's contacting me and they need a response from an agency, or there's a person who needs someone to look at his case, or she needs somebody to come help out with a situation where someone needs help. And that person, I'm able to get the right person to get over there to provide that support or that help. And they call and say, or they don't call me, and I'll call them a couple of days later and say, hey, I just wanted to check back and see how things are going. And they say, Johnny, everything is going great, thanks a million. And that's one where I just, after the phone call, I turn, you know, I just sit back and smile, and it makes you feel really good when you've been able to help someone. Yeah. And that's, you know, that is the high water mark. It's not about the newspapers and then TV articles and seeing your name, but when you know you genuinely helped one person in one way, it's a wonderful thing.